History is written not just in books, but in the stones beneath our feet. The most astonishing secrets are often hidden in plain sight, woven into the fabric of places and objects we think we understand. From ancient codes embedded in city streets to forgotten messages waiting in world-famous art, the past is constantly whispering to us, if only we know how to look. By the end of this journey, you will possess a new lens to see the hidden layers of our world, a lens that reveals 30 incredible mysteries concealed in the everyday. We will examine a botanical book no one can read, explore desert drawings visible only from the heavens, and question a map that should not exist. What forgotten story is waiting for you to discover it? The most frustrating secret in history might be one you can hold in your hands. In the rare book vault of Yale University's Bainach Library rests a small, palm-sized volume that has defied understanding for centuries. This is the Voynich manuscript, a book written entirely in a language or code that no one on Earth can read. Its pages, carbon dated to the early 15th century in northern Italy, are filled with flowing, elegant script that forms no known word. Alongside this alien text are illustrations of a world both familiar and profoundly strange. You see delicate, naked women bathing in green pools connected by intricate plumbing. You see astrological charts with unfamiliar constellations, and most hauntingly, you see page after page of plants. These are not ordinary botanical drawings. The plants are lush, detailed, and utterly fantastical. Roots twist into impossible shapes, leaves spiral in ways no real leaf ever could, and flowers bloom with structures that defy botanical science. For decades, the assumption was simple. This must be a brilliant, elaborate hoax, a medieval forgery designed to fool a wealthy patron. But modern science has confirmed the book's age, and its internal consistency is staggering. The script follows distinct grammatical patterns, with certain characters appearing only at the beginnings of words and others only at the ends. This is the work of a system, not random gibberish. The greatest cryptographers of the 20th century, the very minds who broke Nazi codes, turned their skills to the Voynich and walked away baffled. In the 21st century, artificial intelligence has been tasked with deciphering it, analyzing the text's patterns against every known language and code. The result, silence. The book guards its secret. This leads to a compelling and beautiful theory. What if the plants are not nonsense at all? What if they are a code in themselves? Scholars studying the history of herbal medicine have noticed something peculiar. Certain root structures in the manuscript, while exaggerated, resemble the actual roots of known medicinal herbs. A looping vine might correspond to a plant used for heart ailments. A peculiar bulb could be a stylized version of a powerful painkiller. The theory suggests the entire book is a meticulously encoded pharmacopoeia, a secret herbal of advanced botanical knowledge. In an age where such knowledge was power and sometimes heresy, the author may have chosen to hide it in plain sight. By distorting the plants just enough, and by creating an unbreakable script to describe them, they preserved dangerous wisdom for those with the key. The Voynich manuscript, then, is not a puzzle waiting for a solution. It is a silent library. Its shelves are full, its knowledge intact, but the door is locked, and we have forgotten the language of the lock. This book sits in a public institution, a secret hiding in the open, asking us a single, persistent question. What magnificent understanding are we simply unable to see? While one secret sits locked in a library, another is sprawled across an entire desert, waiting for a view from the heavens. In the arid plains of southern Peru, the Nazca people etched a gallery of colossal art into the earth between 500 BC and 500 AD. These are the Nazca lines, hundreds of geometric shapes and animal figures so vast a hummingbird's wings stretch over 300 feet and a spider measures 150 feet long. From the ground, they are merely shallow grooves in the reddish-brown pebbles, impossible to comprehend. Their majesty is only revealed from the air, a perspective the Nazca themselves could never physically achieve. This simple fact has fueled endless speculation about ancient astronauts and lost technologies, but the truth hiding in plain sight is far more profound and human. These lines are not landing strips for alien craft. They are a complex, interconnected map of the cosmos and the Earth below. Archaeologists studying the alignments have discovered that many of the long, straight lines point directly to the position of the Sun during the winter and summer solstices. Others seem to track the rising points of important stars and constellations, like the Pleiades, which was central to Andean agricultural calendars. The giant animal figures, meanwhile, may represent constellations in the Nazca worldview, turning the entire desert into a mirror of the night sky. But the alignment is not only with the heavens above, it is with the Earth below. The Nazca region is one of the driest places on the planet. Recent research using satellite imagery and ground-penetrating radar has revealed a startling correlation. Many of the lines and trapezoids sit directly above underground aquifers, the hidden veins of water that sustained life. The largest figures are often found at the confluence of multiple such water channels. This suggests the geoglyphs were part of a vast, sacred ritual landscape. Processions may have walked these lines during celestial events, performing ceremonies to thank the gods for bringing water from below and order from above. The desert floor became a spiritual interface connecting the people to the forces that governed their survival. The purpose of specific shapes, like the enigmatic spiral tail of the monkey or the precise geometry of the trapezoids, remains a heated debate. Were they ritual pathways, astronomical markers, or offerings to deities believed to dwell in the mountains and sky? The Nazca lines resist a single, simple answer. They are a secret written on a scale we are only beginning to read, a reminder that ancient peoples perceived connections in their world that we, with all our technology, are still struggling to see. A corroded lump of bronze and wood pulled from a shipwreck seemed like just another piece of ancient debris. In the spring of 1901, sponge divers off the coast of the Greek island of Antikythera discovered a Roman-era cargo ship resting on the seafloor. Among the statues and pottery, they recovered a heavily encrusted, clock-like object about the size of a shoebox. For decades, it sat in a museum in Athens, an unremarkable curiosity assumed to be a navigational instrument or an ornate astrolabe. It was only when archaeologists began to carefully clean and X-ray the fragments that the world glimpsed the secret it had been hiding for 2 millennia. Inside that lump of corrosion was a labyrinth of precision gear wheels, dials, and inscriptions. This was the Antikythera mechanism, and it was not a simple tool. It was an analog computer of staggering complexity, built around 100 BC, a device whose technological sophistication would not be matched again for over 1,000 years. The mechanism was a portable cosmos in a box. By turning a hand crank on the side, an operator could calculate the movements of the Sun, the Moon, and the 5 known planets across the zodiac. It could predict lunar and solar eclipses with remarkable accuracy, and its dials even modeled the irregular orbit of the Moon, a subtlety ancient astronomers were well aware of. One of its most fascinating features was a small, rotating ball, painted half white and half black, that displayed the exact phase of the Moon on any given date. Another dial tracked the 4-year cycle of the Panhellenic Games, the ancient equivalent of the Olympics. This was not merely a scientific instrument, it was a philosophical and cultural engine, connecting celestial mechanics to human events. The secret hiding in plain sight here is not the device itself, but the radical idea of its existence. For centuries, the historical narrative held that the ancient Greeks were brilliant theorists but poor engineers, that they understood the heavens in abstract geometry but lacked the mechanical ingenuity to model them physically. The Antikythera mechanism shatters that assumption completely. Its gear trains employed differential gearing, a technique thought to have been invented in the 16th century. The precision of its bronze gears, some with teeth just a millimeter long, speaks to a workshop tradition of metalworking and miniaturization we never knew existed. This one salvaged artifact forces us to rewrite a chapter of history. It suggests a lost lineage of high mechanical art in the Hellenistic world, a golden age of geared technology that vanished with the fall of that civilization. The knowledge encapsulated in this machine, the product of generations of astronomical observation and mechanical innovation, simply disappeared from the historical record. It would be 1,500 years before European clockmakers reinvented gears of comparable complexity. Who built it and for whom? The leading theory points to the island of Rhodes, a known center of astronomy and engineering, and perhaps even to the legendary workshop of Archimedes. Was it a teaching device for a philosopher's school, a rich man's demonstration of cosmic knowledge, or a navigator's aid for planning long sea voyages? We may never know for certain. The Antikythera mechanism remains a ghost from a road not taken, a whisper of an alternate technological history that faded away. It asks us a humbling question. What other pinnacles of human genius have been lost to time, leaving behind only fragments that we, for centuries, did not even recognize as genius? A map should not be able to show a continent it has never seen. In the Topkapi Palace Museum in Istanbul, a fragment of a world map drawn on gazelle skin in 1513 by the Ottoman admiral and cartographer Piri Reis presents exactly this impossible puzzle. The map, a compilation of about 20 source charts including those captured from Christopher Columbus, is renowned for its startlingly accurate depiction of the Atlantic coastlines of Europe, Africa, and the Americas. But it is the lower left corner, a ragged edge of the surviving fragment, that holds the explosive secret. There, drawn with apparent confidence, is a landmass connected to the southern tip of South America. Piri Reis labeled it, "The coasts of this land are hot." The shape of that coastline, however, bears a chilling resemblance to the Queen Maud Land region of Antarctica, as it would appear under its mile-thick ice cap. This is a continent that would not be officially sighted for another 300 years. The implications are staggering. How could a 16th-century Ottoman admiral know the shape of a land buried under ice for millions of years? The most tantalizing theory suggests the map is not an original work, but a copy of copies, tracing its lineage back to source maps from an ancient seafaring civilization. Proponents of this idea point to geological evidence that Antarctica's coastline was last ice-free and potentially habitable around 4000 BC, during a warm period in Earth's history. Could a sophisticated culture, now lost to time, have mapped those shores? Did their cartographic knowledge survive, passed down through libraries like Alexandria, eventually finding its way into the hands of medieval Arab scholars and then to Piri Reis? This is a narrative of a great filter, a cataclysm that erased the mapmakers but not their maps. Skeptics offer a more grounded, yet still fascinating interpretation. They argue the landmass is simply a speculative, distorted version of South America's eastern coast, perhaps influenced by rumors of a great southern land. The hot coast label could refer to Patagonia. The apparent accuracy, they say, is a coincidence amplified by the map's fragmentary state. We are seeing only a piece of a larger, more conventional world map. Yet, the cartographic precision is difficult to dismiss entirely. Certain longitudinal coordinates on the Piri Reis map are surprisingly accurate for the time, a feat that required understanding the spherical nature of the Earth and a reliable method for calculating longitude, a problem European sailors would not solve for centuries. Did the Ottomans possess advanced navigational mathematics lost to the West, or did they inherit this precision from those same ancient sources? The map sits at a crossroads of history and mystery. It is either a miraculous fragment of a forgotten human epoch or a brilliant but misunderstood work of its own time. Either way, the Piri Reis map forces a humbling admission. Our historical timeline, the neat chart of discoveries we take for granted, might have missing pages. It suggests that the age of exploration did not discover new lands so much as rediscover old ones, following ghostly charts that remembered continents we had forgotten. The Piri Reis map presents a secret of forgotten geography, but another artifact hides a mystery of forgotten light. In the Cathedral of St. John the Baptist in Turin, Italy, a simple linen cloth is kept in a sealed, climate-controlled case. This is the Shroud of Turin, a 14-foot-long piece of herringbone weave that bears the haunting, faint, sepia-toned image of a man who appears to have suffered crucifixion. The wounds match biblical descriptions of the Passion of Christ, from the scourge marks on the back to the puncture in the side. For millions of the faithful, it is the very burial cloth of Jesus. For skeptics, it is a brilliant medieval forgery. The truth hiding in plain sight on this fabric, however, defies easy categorization. The shroud first appeared definitively in historical records in the 1350s in France, and a bishop of the time reported the artist had confessed to forging it. This seemed to settle the matter for centuries. Then, in 1988, science intervened. With permission from the Vatican, 3 independent laboratories were given small samples from a corner of the shroud for radiocarbon dating. The results were unanimous. The flax used to make the linen was grown between 1260 and 1390. The medieval origin appeared confirmed. Case closed, but the shroud refused to stay closed. The image itself is the paradox. It is not a painting. No pigments, no dyes, no brushstrokes have ever been detected on the fibers. The coloration is a mere surface phenomenon, only 1 or 2 fibers deep, caused by a chemical change that resembles a very delicate scorch. More astonishingly, the image possesses properties no medieval forger could have understood or created. When first photographed in 1898, the negative plate revealed a stunning secret. The faint image on the cloth is itself a perfect photographic negative. The shroud's dark patches are light on the negative, producing a detailed, positively lifelike portrait of a man with a serene, 3-dimensional face. Photography was invented in the 19th century, not the 14th. How could a medieval artist paint a perfect negative image centuries before the concept existed? Furthermore, the image encodes 3-dimensional data. When scientists used advanced image analysis technology developed for NASA, they found that the intensity of the image's darkness corresponds precisely to the distance a cloth would have been from a body lying beneath it. The nose is darker than the cheek hollows. This is not a contact stain like a body pressing on wet paint. It behaves as if it was created by a brief, intense burst of radiant energy emanating from the body itself, a kind of directional light that scorched the cloth in proportion to distance. No known medieval technology, nor any natural process scientists have been able to replicate, can produce such an effect on linen. Recent studies have challenged the carbon dating, suggesting the sample taken may have been from a medieval repair patch, or that a fire in the 1500s contaminated the cloth with newer carbon. Textile analysis points to a weave consistent with 1st century Judea. Pollen grains found embedded in the fabric originate from plants native to the area around Jerusalem. The shroud, therefore, exists in a state of profound tension. It is an object that science has both debunked and mystified. It is either the most elaborate and inexplicable hoax in history, created by a genius with knowledge of anatomy, crucifixion practices, and optical physics centuries ahead of his time for no clear personal gain. Or it is a genuine 1st century artifact that carries an imprint science cannot yet explain. The secret of the Shroud of Turin is not a question of belief versus skepticism. It is a physical puzzle that sits in a public cathedral, challenging our timeline of human capability. It asks us which is more incredible, a supernatural event or a human artist who somehow painted with light. A different kind of map promises treasure but delivers only riddles. Among the famous Dead Sea Scrolls, those ancient Jewish texts discovered in clay jars in desert caves, one stands utterly apart. It is not made of fragile parchment or papyrus, but of beaten copper, two fragile sheets inscribed with text and then rolled. This is the copper scroll, and it is not a religious treatise or a book of prophecy. It is an inventory, a list written in a form of Hebrew different from the other scrolls, detailing 64 caches of hidden treasure. The quantities are staggering. It describes tons of gold and silver, along with precious incense and valuable documents, secreted away in locations across the Judean wilderness. At first glance, it reads like a pirate's fantasy. But the secret hiding in plain sight is not the treasure itself. It is the maddening nature of the clues. The scroll provides directions, but they are instructions for a world that vanished 2 millennia ago. It speaks of a ruin in the valley, a cracked reservoir, a tomb with 2 openings, and landmarks like the old washer's chamber. These were likely specific, well-known places in the 1st century, clear as day to anyone living then. Today, they are poetic ghosts. Archaeologists have spent decades trying to match the descriptions to the actual topography. Which valley, which ruin? The Judean desert is vast, and time has eroded countless features. A cracked reservoir could have silted over completely. A tomb with 2 openings might have collapsed. The treasure, if it was ever real, remains hidden not by cunning, but by the relentless passage of time. This leads to the central mystery. Whose treasure was this, and why was it buried? The most compelling theory connects it to the Great Jewish Revolt against Rome, which ended in the year 70 with the destruction of the Second Temple in Jerusalem. The scroll's language and the locations point to a time just before that catastrophe. It is possible the listed wealth represents the temple treasury itself, or the combined riches of Jerusalem's elite, hidden in a desperate attempt to keep it from falling into Roman hands. The priests or rebels who buried it likely expected to return after the conflict. They never did. The copper scroll, then, is a heartbreaking time capsule. It is a set of perfect directions to a fortune, written for people who no longer exist, referencing a landscape that has forgotten its own landmarks. Every word is a clue, yet every clue is a dead end. It transforms the entire Judean desert into a puzzle box where any stone you kick might be steps away from a forgotten hoard. The scroll does not hide its secret in code, but in common knowledge that became uncommon. It asks us what seems obvious today that will be utterly incomprehensible 2,000 years from now. The copper scroll's directions are lost to a changed landscape, but on a remote Pacific island, a different secret was hidden by the earth itself. The monolithic stone heads of Easter Island, the Moai, have stared out from the grassy slopes for centuries, their solemn faces synonymous with mystery and isolation. For generations, the world saw them as just that, heads. The shocking truth, uncovered through careful excavation, is that they are not heads at all. They are full-bodied statues buried up to their shoulders in sediment and rubble. Their hidden torsos stretch deep into the ground, some standing over 30 feet tall from head to toe. This revelation, hiding in plain sight for so long, fundamentally rewrites the story of the Rapa Nui people. The exposed bodies are not blank pillars. They are covered in intricate, detailed carvings etched into the stone. On their backs, you find elaborate petroglyphs of crescent shapes believed to represent the canoes of the island's first Polynesian settlers, a direct link to their seafaring heritage. Other carvings depict sacred symbols like the kamari or vulva form, associated with fertility and the continuity of life. These are not just monuments, they are canvases. The Moai were never meant to be disembodied heads looming over the land. They were complete figures, likely adorned with painted eyes and topped with massive red stone crowns called pukau, standing as proud, full ancestors watching over their descendants. Their burial was likely a slow, natural process, as the island's fragile ecosystem faced strain, erosion, and shifting soils gradually engulfed the statues up to their necks. This accidental entombment created the iconic image we know today, while obscuring the true artistic and cultural achievement of the Rapa Nui. the narrative of a mysterious, doomed civilization pointlessly carving giant heads collapses. Instead, we see a sophisticated society with a deep, spiritual connection to their ancestors, the Mana. They invested immense communal effort to quarry, transport, and erect these colossal figures, each representing a specific lineage chief to project protective power over the community. The hidden bodies tell a story not of folly but of profound reverence, a story that was literally buried by time. When you look at a moai now, you are not seeing a mysterious head. You are seeing the tip of a giant, a sentinel standing guard, its full story still rooted in the earth beneath your feet. What other truths about forgotten cultures are still buried, waiting for us to look just a little deeper? The silent giants of Easter Island guard their stories beneath the soil, but the most famous monument on Earth hides its secrets within stone. For centuries, the Great Pyramid of Giza was considered a solved puzzle, a massive tomb for the pharaoh Khufu, its internal chambers mapped and explored. The Grand Gallery, the King's Chamber with its empty sarcophagus, and the mysterious, cramped Queen's Chamber were thought to be the full extent of its interior. The pyramid's greatest secret, however, was not an artifact but an absence, a vast, empty space. In 2017, an international team of scientists made a staggering announcement. Using a revolutionary technique called muon radiography, they had detected a huge void deep within the pyramid's heart above the Grand Gallery. This was not a small crack or a natural fissure. Dubbed the Big Void, this chamber is estimated to be at least 100 feet long, with a cross-section similar to the Grand Gallery itself. Muons are subatomic particles that rain down from the atmosphere, passing through solid matter. By placing sensitive muon detectors inside the pyramid, scientists could track how many particles passed through the walls. A significant drop in muons indicated they were being blocked by something dense, but in this case the data revealed the opposite. An unexpected surplus of muons meant they were passing through nothing. The pyramid, a structure we have studied for millennia, had a hidden room. The immediate question is as obvious as it is tantalizing. What is it for? The void is sealed with no apparent corridors leading to it. Its purpose remains pure speculation, but each theory opens a window into the pyramid's true nature. The leading idea is that it is a relieving chamber. The Grand Gallery is an architectural marvel designed to distribute the immense weight of the pyramid's upper layers away from the King's Chamber below. The Big Void could be another, larger such structure, a hidden buffer of empty space intended to prevent the mountain of stone from crushing the burial chamber. It is a safety feature built into the very fabric of the monument. Another possibility is that it represents a construction gap. The pyramid was built in stages, and the internal layout might have shifted during its 20-year construction. This void could be a space left behind when the builders altered their plans, a sort of architectural attic filled with nothing but ancient air, yet the sheer scale of it gives pause. It is too large, too deliberate seeming to be merely an accident. Then there is the most captivating idea of all. What if the Big Void is the real final resting place? The so-called King's Chamber is austere, its granite sarcophagus found empty. What if it was always a decoy, a false tomb meant to distract robbers? The true burial chamber of Khufu, along with the legendary treasures that must have accompanied a god king, could still be sealed within this undiscovered space, untouched for 4,500 years. The technology that found the void, muon radiography, cannot tell us what is inside, only that the space exists. It is a blank on the map, a silent question etched in limestone. This discovery fundamentally changes our relationship with the ancient world. It proves that even the most scrutinized monument in history still has cards left to play. The Big Void is a secret not of symbolism but of sheer physical space. It reminds us that the past is not a flat painting but a deep, three-dimensional structure, and we have only been looking at the surface. What other voids, what other empty rooms are waiting silently within the world's oldest wonders? A hidden chamber within a pyramid speaks to grand, intentional secrets, but some of history's most personal mysteries are small enough to hold in your palm. Scattered across the former expanse of the Roman Empire, from the wet fields of Britain to the sunny vineyards of Italy, amateur archaeologists with metal detectors have unearthed curious artifacts that defy explanation. These are the Roman dodecahedrons, beautiful hollow objects cast in bronze, each with 12 flat pentagonal faces. Every face has a circular hole of a different diameter, and at each of the 20 corners sits a small knob or ball. They range from the size of a golf ball to that of a large grapefruit, and not a single one has ever been found in an official Roman settlement, mosaic or fresco. They are absent from all Roman literature, tax records, and military inventories. For archaeologists, this is the ultimate cold case, a perfectly preserved, exquisitely crafted object from one of history's most meticulous record-keeping civilizations, and its purpose is a complete and total blank. The theories are as varied as they are ingenious, each trying to crack a code left behind without a cipher. Some suggest they were simply decorative candlestick holders with a wax taper placed through the holes. Yet the holes are all different sizes, and no traces of wax have ever been found inside the bronze. Others propose they were dice for an elaborate gambling game, but their uneven faces and hollow, lightweight construction make them terrible for rolling fairly. Could they have been tools? One persistent idea casts them as sophisticated surveying instruments. By aligning one hole with a distant stake and sighting through another, a Roman engineer might have calculated distances or angles for building roads. The different hole sizes could correspond to various standard measurements. Still, no two dodecahedrons are exactly alike in their hole dimensions, which undermines the idea of a standardized tool. Perhaps they were used in the making of textiles. A compelling homespun theory suggests they were used for knitting gloves. By threading yarn through the holes and over the knobs, one could create consistent finger-sized tubes of fabric. This would explain their discovery in rural, domestic settings, but again, there is no corroborating evidence. No worn grooves from yarn on the knobs, no depictions of their use. Then there is the spiritual explanation. Their geometric perfection, based on the 12-sided dodecahedron, held mystical significance for philosophers like Plato, who associated the shape with the cosmos or the ether. Could these objects have been ritual devices for a secretive cult, used in ceremonies that left no written trace? Their discovery, often in isolated, boundary regions of the empire, might hint at localized religious practices Rome chose not to document. The true secret of the dodecahedron is not what it was, but what its existence represents. It is a hole in our knowledge. In a world where we can read Roman grocery lists and understand their plumbing, here is an object produced in some quantity, valued enough to be cast in expensive bronze, and yet its function was so commonplace, so utterly ordinary to its users, that no one ever thought to write it down. It was the Roman equivalent of a potato peeler or a corkscrew, an everyday item unworthy of note. That ordinary context is now lost forever, turning the mundane into the magnificent mystery. Each theory we apply says more about us than it does about the Romans. We see a geometric shape and think of advanced mathematics. We see holes and think of measurement or craft. We are trying to solve a riddle posed by people who did not know they were leaving one. The dodecahedron sits in museum cases today, a polished, silent question. It is a reminder that history is not just made by kings and battles, but by countless ordinary hands using ordinary things, and sometimes the most common tools become the most profound enigmas when their world vanishes. From a silent Roman puzzle, we jump to a modern monument that shouted its message from a Georgia hilltop. The Georgia Guidestones were not ancient. Erected in 1979, this massive granite structure stood as one of America's most enigmatic and controversial modern mysteries. On a remote farm in Elbert County, Georgia, a visitor would find 6 giant slabs of granite over 19 feet tall, arranged in a star pattern and capped with a massive keystone. The stones were inscribed with 10 guiding principles for humanity, written in 8 modern languages with a shorter message in 4 ancient scripts carved into the capstone. The principles were a mix of the pragmatic and the utopian, urging humanity to maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature, to guide reproduction wisely, to unite humanity with a living new language, and to rule passion, faith, tradition, and all things with tempered reason. The monument functioned as a precise astronomical calendar, with holes and slots aligned to track the sun's solstices and equinoxes, and a slot pointing to the North Star. But the core mystery was not in its design, it was in its origin. The entire project was commissioned by a man using the pseudonym R.C. Christian, who walked into a local granite company, presented elaborate plans, and paid for it all in cash. He claimed to represent a small group of Americans who wished to leave a message for future generations, but their true identities and motives remained a fiercely guarded secret. This anonymity fueled decades of speculation. Were the guidestones a blueprint for a new, rational world order, a benign attempt to offer wisdom after a potential collapse, or were they something darker, a manifesto for population control and global governance that many saw as elitist and alarming? The stones stood for over 4 decades, a polarizing landmark that was simultaneously a tourist curiosity and a target for vandalism. Then, in 2022, the mystery took a violent turn. The monument was severely damaged in an explosion, and the remaining structure was demolished for safety shortly after. The destruction did not solve the puzzle, it only deepened it. Who wanted the guidestones gone, and why now? The act erased a physical object but amplified its legend, transforming it from a controversial monument into a modern myth. The secret of the Georgia guidestones is no longer about what they said, but about why they provoked such powerful reactions. They served as a Rorschach test for our fears and hopes about the future. To some, they were a warning against overpopulation and environmental ruin. To others, they were a sinister artifact of a shadowy agenda. Their physical disappearance means we are left only with the echoes of their message and the unanswered question of what R.C. Christian's group truly believed they were preserving for a future they would never see. In a world saturated with information, they chose granite and silence, leaving us to argue over the meaning of words carved in stone, words that now exist only in photographs and memory. While modern monuments provoke debate with words, an unassuming clay jar from ancient Iraq suggests a secret hum of forgotten power. Discovered in 1936 near Baghdad, this artifact, dating from the Parthian period around 200 BC to 200 AD, looks like a simple storage vessel at first glance. It is a 6-inch tall pot of bright yellow clay, but its contents tell a different story. Inside, archaeologists found a carefully rolled copper sheet, formed into a cylinder sealed at the bottom with an asphalt plug. Through the center of this plug was thrust an iron rod, suspended perfectly within the copper cylinder without touching it. When the jar was found, it showed signs of corrosion, and a faint acidic residue, perhaps vinegar or wine, was detected inside. To any modern eye, the assembly is unmistakable. This is the basic components of a simple electric battery. Fill the jar with an acidic electrolyte like vinegar, and a chemical reaction occurs. The acidic liquid interacts with the 2 different metals, the iron and the copper, causing electrons to flow from one to the other through the electrolyte. Connect the iron rod and the copper cylinder with a wire, and you have a continuous, low-voltage electric current. This is a galvanic cell, the foundational principle of a battery. The theory is electrifying in every sense. If correct, it means a civilization over 2,000 years old possessed not just a philosophical understanding of natural forces, but a practical, working knowledge of electrochemistry. What would they have used it for? The most compelling application proposed is electroplating. artisans could have used the battery's gentle current to deposit a thin layer of gold or silver onto lesser metals, gilding jewelry or sacred objects with a flawless adhesive coating. This would explain the exquisite, microscopically thin gold plating found on artifacts from the same era and region, work that was always assumed to have been done with mercury, a dangerous and complex process. A simple battery array could have achieved similar results with far more control and safety. The idea transforms our view of ancient workshops from places of brute force and fire to potentially humming with subtle, unseen energy. Skeptics, however, offer a more mundane explanation. They argue the jar is simply a storage container for sacred scrolls. The copper cylinder would have held a rolled parchment, the iron rod acting as a sturdy core for handling, and the asphalt plug would have kept the contents dry and sealed. The acidic residue could be from organic material that decayed inside over centuries. They point out that no wires, no connected vessels, and no electroplated objects were found with the so-called battery. Without these companion artifacts, the electrical theory remains an intriguing possibility, not a proven fact. Yet the elegance of the design is hard to dismiss. The asphalt plug is a perfect insulator, preventing the two metals from touching and short-circuiting. The choice of iron and copper, two metals with a strong electrochemical potential difference, seems deliberate. Whether it was a battery or a scroll case, the Baghdad jar represents a profound fork in the road of history. If it was a battery, it hints at a path of technological inquiry that was opened, used for a specific purpose like gilding, and then abandoned or kept secret, its principle lost for millennia until Volta reinvented it in 1800. If it was merely a storage vessel, then it is one of history's most breathtaking coincidences, a perfect mimicry of advanced technology created by chance. The jar sits quietly in a museum, a vessel that either held ancient electricity or ancient texts. In both cases, it holds a powerful question about the nature of discovery. How many great ideas have been found, used, and then forgotten, leaving behind only artifacts that look like magic until we rediscover the science behind them? The silent, unexplained energy of a possible ancient battery gives way to a modern mystery solved by the patient eye of a camera. In the heart of Death Valley, on the vast, flat expanse of the racetrack playa, the ground tells a story of impossible movement. Scattered across this ancient lake bed are hundreds of rocks, from small pebbles to boulders weighing over 700 pounds. Behind them, stretching for hundreds of feet across the cracked mud, are long, graceful trails. They curve, they zigzag, they run perfectly straight. These are the tracks of the sailing stones, and for over a century they presented a riddle with no visible answer. The rocks were clearly moving, but no one had ever seen them budge. In a place where human witnesses are rare and summer temperatures soar past 130 degrees, the stones seem to travel under the cover of darkness or solitude, leaving only their enigmatic signatures behind. Theories abounded, ranging from the playful to the paranoid. Could powerful dust devils be spinning them across the clay? Was the ground itself shifting in subtle, seismic waves? Perhaps, some whispered, it was the work of mischievous spirits or secret military experiments. The secret was hiding in plain sight on the dry lake bed, but the key to unlocking it was a phenomenon as delicate as it was precise. The solution arrived not with a dramatic cracking of the code, but through years of stubborn observation. Scientists installed weather stations and placed custom-built, GPS-equipped stones on the playa. They waited. Then, in the winter of 2013, a research team finally captured the event on time-lapse photography. The mechanism was breathtakingly simple, a recipe requiring exact ingredients. First, a rare rain must fall on the playa, creating a shallow, temporary pond. Then, a cold snap must freeze that water into a thin, window-pane sheet of ice across the surface. Now the final ingredient, a gentle sun. As daylight returns, the ice begins to melt and fracture into large, floating panels. When a light breeze of just 5 to 10 miles per hour pushes against these ice sheets, they become vast, invisible sails. A rock embedded in the ice is caught in this natural force. The sheet, driven by the wind, grinds slowly across the slick, wet mud, and the stone plows a furrow behind it. The process is silent, slow, and almost magical in its efficiency. A breeze you would barely feel on your face can push a half-ton boulder on a leisurely stroll. The curves in the trails happen as the ice panels rotate or break apart, changing the stone's direction. When the water evaporates and the ice vanishes, all that remains is the rock and its long, elegant trail, a permanent record of a fleeting, fragile dance between ice, wind, and stone. The mystery of the sailing stones is a powerful lesson in perception. For decades, we looked at the trails and imagined a powerful, violent force, a shove, a spin, a sudden lurch. The truth was far more gentle, a nudge sustained over hours or days. It reminds us that some of nature's greatest feats are performed not with a roar, but with a whisper, and that the most obvious clues can point to a process we are simply not patient enough or lucky enough to see. Sometimes a discovery seems to break time itself. In the summer of 1936, on a walk near the town of London, Texas, a couple made a peculiar find. Protruding from a solid chunk of Cretaceous rock, estimated to be over 100 million years old, was what appeared to be a modern hammer. The wooden handle was partially petrified, merging seamlessly with the stone, but the hammer head itself was made of a high-quality, unusual form of iron. When it was later chiseled free, the object presented a riddle that has fueled debate for decades. Here was a tool that looked like it belonged in a 19th-century blacksmith shop, encased in stone that formed when dinosaurs walked the earth. For those who challenged conventional geology, this was irrefutable proof. They argued the London hammer, as it came to be known, was a genuine artifact from an antediluvian civilization, a human tool lost before Noah's flood and buried in the sediments that became rock. It was the ultimate out-of-place artifact, an anachronism that seemed to shatter our understanding of deep time. The hammer head itself added to the mystery. Metallurgical analysis in the 1980s suggested the iron was unusually pure, lacking the slag common in modern smelting, and showed a curious structure indicating it was hammered and worked by hand. To proponents, this wasn't a lost miner's tool from the 1800s. It was a relic of advanced, forgotten metalworking. The secret, however, lies not in the hammer but in the rock that embraced it. Geologists point to a common but misleading natural process called concretion. In certain conditions, minerals in groundwater can precipitate and cement sediments together, forming a hard, rock-like nodule around any object. This process can happen relatively quickly, in centuries or even decades, not eons. A hammer lost in a creek bed a few hundred years ago could become the nucleus for such a concretion. The resulting stone, while hard, is not necessarily ancient. It is a kind of geological shell. The hammer's unusual iron composition is also demystified by this context. It is likely a type of iron produced in a small, local bloomery forge, a common method in frontier America, which could create relatively pure, slag-free metal. The petrified wood of the handle is another red herring. Petrification, the replacement of organic material with minerals, can occur on a human timescale under the right geochemical conditions, especially in mineral-rich waters. So the object tells two competing stories. One is a narrative of catastrophic historical revision, where humans and dinosaurs coexisted. The other is a lesson in geological patience, where nature can perform a convincing magic trick, encasing a recent object in a stony cocoon that merely looks primordial. The London hammer does not challenge timelines, it challenges our perception. It asks us to distinguish between what something appears to be and what it actually is. In a world quick to embrace the extraordinary, it serves as a reminder that sometimes the most astonishing secrets are not secrets at all, but misunderstandings written in stone. Deep within the stone walls of an Egyptian temple, a carving seems to flicker with anachronistic light. In the crypts of the Hathor temple at Dendera, a famous relief shows a strange and captivating scene. A giant, elongated object shaped like a modern light bulb is held aloft by a priest. Inside this bulb curves a snake, its body held straight by a supporting rod. A cable seems to run from the bulb's base, connecting it to a box that is gripped by a kneeling god, while a baboon-like figure stands guard with knives. To the modern eye, the resemblance is uncanny. It looks for all the world like an ancient electrical device, a Crookes tube or an arc lamp, complete with its power source and protective insulation. This is the heart of the so-called Dendera light bulb theory, a claim that ancient Egyptians possessed advanced electrical technology, a secret lost to the sands of time. The image feels like a direct window into a forgotten world of innovation, a single frame from a lost instruction manual for technology we thought we invented. The emotional pull of this idea is powerful. It suggests a hidden chapter of history, one where the pyramids might have been illuminated from within, where temples glowed with artificial day. It transforms our view of ancient Egypt from a civilization of torch and shadow to one of brilliant, humming light. This interpretation, however, shines a light not on Egyptian engineering, but on a fundamental human tendency to see our own world reflected in the past. To understand the carving, we must step out of the 20th century and into the Egyptian mind. Egyptologists point to the surrounding hieroglyphs and the temple's entire thematic program. This is not an electrical diagram, it is a creation myth carved in stone. The object is not a glass bulb but a lotus flower, the ancient symbol of birth and regeneration. From this lotus emerges a snake which represents the god Harsomptus, a manifestation of the sun god at the moment of creation. The supporting rod is a divine scepter, the scepter symbolizing power and dominion. The cable is not a wire but the stem of the lotus plant itself, connecting the symbol to its source. The box is a jed pillar, an emblem of stability and the backbone of the god Osiris. The kneeling god is Her, the personification of infinity, holding the scene for eternity, while the baboon is a form of the god Thoth, protector of sacred spaces. The entire tableau is a snapshot of a deeply spiritual moment, the emergence of the sun god from the primordial waters, using symbols as familiar to an ancient priest as a circuit board is to an engineer. The knives held by the baboon are not for cutting wires but for warding off evil spirits during this sacred cosmic birth. The context transforms everything. What we see as a filament is a serpent deity. What we see as a cable is a botanical stem. What we see as a power box is a pillar of stability. The secret of the Dendera relief is not a technological one, it is a lesson in perception. Two people can look at the same set of lines and see two entirely different realities, one shaped by volts and glass, the other by gods and lotuses. This does not diminish the carving's wonder, it deepens it. It reminds us that the past is not a mirror, but a window into a different way of seeing the universe, where creation was not sparked by electricity, but by divine will emerging from a stone flower. A stone tower stands in a quiet Rhode Island park, its origin a quiet war between two histories. The Newport Tower rises 28 feet high, a circle of rough stone supported by 8 sturdy arches, looking for all the world like a medieval European structure misplaced in time. For generations, the official story was simple and colonial. Town records from the 1670s mention a stone mill built by Rhode Island's early governor, Benedict Arnold, the grandfather of the infamous traitor. It seemed a settled fact, a curious but explainable relic of early American industry. Yet the tower itself whispers a different, far older story to those who study its bones. The architectural style is the first, loudest clue. This is not a typical colonial windmill. Colonial mills were almost always square or rectangular, built of wood, and designed with a central post to turn the entire roof into the wind. The Newport Tower is a perfect cylinder made of mortared fieldstone with arches that are distinctly Romanesque, a style that faded in Europe by the late 12th century. Its design bears a startling resemblance to known Norse structures, like the round churches of Scandinavia or the baptistry of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, which Viking pilgrims would have seen in Jerusalem. The placement of its windows is equally peculiar. Specific apertures align not for practical milling light but with celestial events. One window frames the sunrise on the summer solstice, another targets certain stars. This is the signature of a people deeply attuned to the sky for navigation and ritual, not the hallmark of a pragmatic colonial miller. Then there are the carvings, faint and worn by centuries of New England weather. On some stones, researchers claim to see markings reminiscent of Norse runes, though these interpretations are fiercely debated. More concrete is a small, mysterious channel carved into the interior floor, which some argue could have been part of a baptismal font, aligning with the theory it was a small chapel. If the tower is Norse, it redates Columbus by centuries and even predates the only confirmed Viking site in North America, Elance Oaks Meadows in Newfoundland, which was a seasonal camp, not a permanent stone settlement. This would mean Norse explorers did not just briefly visit the New World, they built lasting structures intending to stay. The counter-argument from historians is one of Occam's razor. Why invent a complex pre-Columbian mystery when we have a written record from the 1600s attributing it to Arnold? Colonial builders often experimented with designs remembered from the Old World. The celestial alignments could be coincidence, and the worn carvings might be nothing more than tool marks or later graffiti. The tower sits on land Benedict Arnold owned, and its construction style, while unusual, is not impossible for a wealthy, educated colonist with knowledge of European architecture. So the tower stands at a crossroads, a physical argument. It is either a fascinating colonial oddity, a governor's vanity project mimicking ancient styles, or it is one of the most significant archaeological secrets in the United States, a Viking beacon hiding in plain sight in a public park. Every stone in its cylinder is a word in a debate about who first wrote their story onto this continent. The truth is locked in the mortar, waiting for a definitive piece of evidence to tip the scales and rewrite a chapter of history we thought we had already closed. High on the Tibetan Plateau, in a stark and remote region of China, a mountain holds a secret that seems torn from the pages of science fiction. Near the town of Delingha, close to the shores of Lake Tosan, 3 triangular cave openings are carved into the side of Mount Baigong. Inside these caves and protruding from the rock face outside are dozens of rust-colored iron pipes. They run horizontally into the mountain, vertically from the ground like ancient plumbing, and even stretch into the nearby saltwater lake itself. Their diameters range from toothpick thin to nearly 16 inches across, and they are arranged in patterns that feel deliberate, almost architectural. To the eye, they appear unmistakably artificial, a network of metallic tubing frozen in stone. The local nomadic tribes, the Tuvans, have no legends of their construction. They simply call them the relics left by the gods. The pipes are composed primarily of iron, but with significant amounts of silicon dioxide and calcium oxide. Most intriguingly, about 8% of their material is unidentifiable. When samples were sent for dating at a Beijing institute, the results sent shockwaves through those following the mystery. The pipes, according to the analysis, are roughly 150,000 years old. This is a number that defies conventional history. If human-made, these structures would predate Homo sapiens mastering fire by tens of thousands of years. The official geological explanation offers a far more natural, but no less fascinating, answer. Geologists from the Chinese government who have studied the site propose that these are not pipes at all, but the fossilized casts of ancient tree roots. In this process, known as root casting, mineral-rich water percolates through the spaces left by decaying roots. Over immense periods, the minerals precipitate out, hardening into a tube of stone that perfectly mirrors the original organic shape. The iron oxide in the water gives the casts their rusty metallic color and composition. This would explain the branching patterns, the varying sizes, and their integration with the surrounding sandstone mountain. It is a common, if spectacular, geological phenomenon. Yet, for proponents of the artificial theory, several stubborn questions remain. The pipes show evidence of high-temperature smelting, with their silicon content suggesting a sophisticated metallurgical process. Some of the pipes are also aligned with astronomical points, and the presence of a 40-foot-tall, pyramid-shaped natural formation nearby adds an air of intentional placement to the entire site. How could tree roots produce such pure, metallic tubes with such consistent shapes? The debate, therefore, is not merely about what the objects are, but about how we interpret anomalies in the deep past. Are we seeing a miraculous geological sculpture, a one-in-a-million natural arrangement that perfectly mimics human industry? Or are we looking at the crumbling infrastructure of a forgotten chapter on Earth, a literal pipeline from a time we cannot remember? The Bagong pipes sit in their silent, windswept mountain, a testament to one of history's most profound choices. We can either see them as a reminder of nature's boundless ability to create forms that mirror our own, or as the rusted signature of a lost civilization whose age we are only beginning to measure. A different kind of pact may be written in the pages of the world's largest surviving medieval manuscript. The Codex Gigas, or Giant Book, is a behemoth weighing 165 pounds, its wooden covers stretching 3 feet tall. Created in the early 13th century at a Benedictine monastery in Bohemia, its legend is as large as its size. According to the story, a monk broke his sacred vows and was sentenced to be walled up alive. In desperation, he promised to create a book containing all human knowledge in a single night, a feat impossible without help. He prayed not to God but to the fallen angel, and with the devil's aid he completed the codex. The evidence for this dark bargain is said to be on page 290, a full-page, chilling portrait of the devil himself. He is depicted alone in a void of empty parchment, a crowned prince of darkness with clawed hands and feet, a forked tongue, and a body of mottled white and green, staring out from the page with an unsettling, direct gaze. This is the Devil's Bible, and its secret hides not in the demonic image, but in the staggering human effort surrounding it. The Codex contains the complete Latin Vulgate Bible, historical works by Josephus, medical texts by Hippocrates, a chronicle of Bohemia, and various spells and formulas. For one man to produce this by hand would be a lifetime's work, yet analysis of the handwriting and ink tells a fascinating story. The entire manuscript, from Genesis to the final page, is written in a remarkably consistent hand. The letter forms, the spacing, the pressure of the pen, all point to a single scribe. There are no shifts in style, no telltale signs of multiple authors taking shifts. This uniformity is the real miracle. Paleographers estimate that just copying the text without the elaborate illuminations, capital letters, and the famous devil portrait would have taken approximately 5 years of non-stop daily labor. The legend of a single night is fantasy, but the reality of a single, obsessed monk is not. He likely did sentence himself not to a literal wall, but to a self-imposed prison of scriptorium and candlelight. The psychological toll of such a monumental, isolated task could well explain the origin of the myth. A mind strained by years of repetitive work, surrounded by silent stone, might project its own exhaustion onto the page, giving form to the demon of fatigue and despair in a stunning burst of artistic catharsis. The devil in the Codex Gigas, then, is not a sign of a supernatural pact. It is a signature. It is the dark reflection of the scribe's own monumental struggle, a portrait of the shadow that follows a person who dedicates years of their life to a single, consuming act of creation. The book is not a devil's Bible. It is a monument to a human mind and the incredible, terrifying things it can produce when pushed to its absolute limit. The weight of a single mind's obsession gives way to the collective mystery of an entire people. Deep in the lush river deltas of southern Costa Rica, the earth holds nearly perfect spheres. These are the stone spheres of the Diquis, ranging from the size of a melon to colossal orbs over 8 feet in diameter and weighing 16 tons. Their geometry is unnerving, carved from hard granodiorite with a precision that suggests the sculptors had an advanced understanding of symmetry and balance. They appear in clusters, sometimes in lines, sometimes in geometric patterns, scattered across ancient village sites and burial grounds as if placed by giants at play. For the indigenous cultures that flourished here from around 600 AD until the Spanish arrival, these spheres were clearly central to their world. But their purpose evaporated with the people who made them, leaving behind only the silent, polished stones. The most compelling theories try to listen to that silence. Some archaeologists see the heavens reflected in their arrangements. Certain alignments of spheres seem to correspond to the rising and setting of significant stars or the solstice sun, suggesting they were a physical calendar, anchoring the community to the cycles of the cosmos. Others see social order carved in stone. The size and placement of a sphere might have denoted the status of a chieftain or a family lineage, with the largest spheres marking the most powerful households. They could have been territorial markers, sacred symbols of unity, or even gaming pieces in a ritual whose rules are lost. Each theory paints a different picture of the society, from star watchers to status-conscious nobles. But the true tragedy, the devastating secret, is that we may never know for certain. When the spheres were rediscovered in the 1930s during banana plantation clearing, they were seen not as archaeological treasures but as curiosities and obstacles. The legend that they contained hidden gold took root. Treasure hunters, driven by greed, did the unthinkable. They dynamited hundreds of these perfect spheres, cracking them open in search of a hollow core that never existed. In that explosive violence, they did more than destroy artifacts, they obliterated context. The patterns were shattered, the arrangements lost forever. The spheres that survive are often orphans, moved from their original sites to decorate government buildings or private gardens, their ancient conversations with the landscape permanently severed. This act of destruction created a second, more poignant mystery layered over the first. We are left not only wondering what the spheres meant, but also grieving the answers that were literally blown to pieces. The surviving stones now sit in museums and fields, impossibly smooth and silent. They are a monument to human ingenuity and simultaneously to human carelessness. They ask us what other secrets we have shattered in our rush to find a simpler, more lucrative truth. A story can be so compelling it writes its own history. In 1938, a Chinese archaeologist named Kai Pu-te reportedly entered the remote Bayan Karaula caves on the border of China and Tibet. What he allegedly found inside would ignite one of the most persistent alien mysteries of the 20th century. According to the tale, the expedition discovered not ancient human remains, but the skeletons of small, large-headed beings. Scattered around them were hundreds of strange stone discs, each about 9 inches across, with a hole in the center and a fine, double-grooved spiral carving running from the hole to the edge. These were the Dropa stones, said to be 12,000 years old. The story deepens. When the discs were later examined, the grooves were claimed to be a form of microscopic hieroglyphic writing. Once deciphered, the script told a tragic, interstellar story. It described a spacecraft from a distant planet that crash-landed in the mountains. The survivors, the Dropa people, could not repair their ship and were stranded on Earth, facing hostility from the local tribes who viewed them as alien and dangerous. The stones were their recorded history, a plea for understanding carved in stone. This narrative has all the hallmarks of a perfect mystery: ancient artifacts, alien visitors, and a lost chapter of human prehistory. It feels like a secret hiding in plain sight, waiting to rewrite everything we know. But here is the real secret, the one that hides behind the sensational headlines. There is no evidence any of it is true. No credible archaeological journal has ever published Kai Pute's findings. The supposed professor himself cannot be verified in any academic records of the time. No museum in the world holds a single Dropa stone, and no scientist has ever been allowed to examine one. The entire story appears to have been manufactured, first appearing in a German magazine for paranormal enthusiasts in the 1960s, then growing with each retelling. The most likely origin is a work of fiction that escaped into the world as fact, a modern myth that found fertile ground in our fascination with ancient astronauts. The Dropa stones are not a historical mystery, they are a case study in how mysteries are born. They show how a compelling narrative, stripped of its need for physical proof, can take on a life of its own, repeated in books and documentaries until it feels as real as any artifact in a museum. This manufactured secret asks us a crucial question, not about aliens, but about our own desire to believe. What makes us so eager to accept a story that confirms our sense of wonder, even when the evidence is nowhere to be found? While myths are born from stories, a castle was built by one man's hands. In the humid Florida landscape of Homestead stands a monument to obsession that rivals the pyramids in its mystery. This is the Coral Castle, a complex of massive stone sculptures, walls, and furniture, all carved from over 1,000 tons of oolite limestone. The architect and builder was a single individual, a Latvian immigrant named Edward Leedskalnin. He stood just 5 feet tall and weighed barely 100 pounds, yet between 1923 and 1951, working almost entirely alone and mostly at night, he quarried, carved, shaped, and positioned enormous blocks, some weighing as much as 30 tons. He did this with no modern machinery, no visible assistance, and only a set of simple hand tools found in his workshop after his death. The secret of the Coral Castle is not just its existence, but the profound question of how. Leedskalnin was famously secretive. When asked by curious visitors how he moved the stones, he would only smile and say he understood the laws of weight and leverage, and that he had rediscovered the building secrets of the ancient pyramids. He spoke often of magnetism, claiming to have uncovered the fundamental principles of cosmic force. In pamphlets he wrote, he argued that all matter was simply individual magnets acting in concert, and that by understanding their polarity, one could manipulate weight itself. To many, this sounded like the ramblings of an eccentric, but the evidence of his work forced a second look. How did he raise a 9-ton gate so perfectly balanced a child could push it open with a finger? How did he carve a massive stone telescope precisely aligned with the North Star? His tools, discovered after his passing, were rudimentary chains, blocks, metal bars, and simple winches. Witnesses reported seeing him work, but they described nothing extraordinary, just a small man placing his hands on the stones, sometimes humming, as if in tune with some unseen vibration. The most persistent theory is that Leedskalnin was a practical genius of mechanics. He may have used a simple but forgotten principle of counterweight and fulcrum, moving the massive stones inch by agonizing inch with a system of tripods, chains, and pivots. A single block could have taken months to reposition. His secrecy may have been less about magic and more about protecting a method that was deceptively simple, a method that made the impossible look like sheer willpower. Yet the sheer scale of his solo achievement continues to baffle engineers. It suggests either a monumental patience bordering on the superhuman, or a genuine, intuitive grasp of physics that he could never articulate in a way science would accept. Ed Leedskalnin took his true methods to the grave. The Coral Castle remains a park of silent, heavy questions. It stands as a testament to the idea that a single determined mind, armed with a secret it refuses to share, can literally move mountains, leaving behind a puzzle built not to be solved but to be wondered at. Scattered across the misty valleys of northern Laos lies a landscape that feels both ancient and unnervingly still. Here, thousands of giant stone jars, some standing 10 feet tall and weighing several tons, dot the grasslands and forest edges. Carved from sandstone and granite, their shapes are simple, cylindrical or square, with some featuring a carved lip around the rim. These are the Plain of Jars, a megalithic cemetery dating back to the Southeast Asian Iron Age from about 500 BC to 500 AD. Archaeologists believe the jars served as burial urns, where bodies were placed to decompose before the bones were later collected for a secondary burial elsewhere. Excavations have uncovered human remains, burial goods like beads and iron tools, and ceramic pots around the jars, confirming their funerary purpose. But the secret of this plain is not just in the jars themselves, it is in the deadly silence that now surrounds them. The deeper mystery is not why they are there, but why we still know so little about them. The answer lies in the ground beneath the stones. During the Vietnam War, this region of Laos became the most heavily bombed area per capita in human history, as part of a secret campaign to disrupt supply lines. Millions of cluster bomblets were dropped, and a staggering number, up to 30%, failed to explode on impact. Today, the Plain of Jars remains one of the most contaminated landscapes on Earth, littered with unexploded ordnance. This hidden, modern danger has created an extraordinary and tragic preservation. Archaeologists cannot simply walk the fields and dig. Every survey, every excavation must be preceded by painstaking, inch-by-inch clearance by bomb disposal teams. This makes research slow, expensive, and perilous. As a result, the fundamental questions remain locked in place, guarded by an unintended and lethal fence. Who exactly were the people who carved and moved these massive jars? What rituals accompanied the placement of the dead? Why are the jars arranged in clusters, sometimes containing hundreds across dozens of separate sites? The unexploded bombs have, in a horrific twist, frozen the archaeological clock. They have prevented both the destruction of the sites by modern development and their full exploration by science. The jars stand as silent sentinels in a field of hidden threats, their ancient secrets protected by a much more recent and much more violent layer of history. This creates a poignant duality, a site where the mystery of death from 2,000 years ago is intertwined with the imminent danger of death from 50 years ago. To walk the Plain of Jars is to walk through two layers of time, both of them silent, one contemplative, the other lethal. It is a stark reminder that history is not always buried by dirt. Sometimes it is buried by fear, and the most profound secrets are those that are physically too dangerous to uncover. The massive moai are not the only silent guardians on Easter Island. In the late 19th century, missionaries and explorers made a startling discovery in the island's few remaining homes. They found wooden tablets, staffs, and ceremonial objects covered in tiny, finely carved glyphs. These symbols, known as rongo-rongo, depict stylized birds, fish, plants, and geometric forms arranged in a pattern called reverse baustrophedon, where the text reads left to right on one line, then flips upside down to read right to left on the next, like an ox plowing a field. To the eye, it is unmistakably a writing system, a way to record language in a permanent form. This discovery was electrifying, for it suggested that the Rapa Nui people, in complete isolation on the most remote inhabited island on Earth, had independently invented writing, a cognitive leap achieved only a handful of times in all of human history. Yet this incredible secret is also a profound tragedy because the key to reading it was violently stolen. In the 1860s, the island's society was already reeling from ecological strain. Then came a series of devastating raids by Peruvian slave traders. They descended on the island, rounding up people to work in the guano mines of Peru. Among those kidnapped were the community's most important individuals, the chiefs, priests, and elders, the very people who would have held the knowledge of the rongo-rongo script. While international pressure eventually forced Peru to repatriate the survivors, the return voyage was a death sentence. Almost all of the kidnapped islanders, including every single elder who knew the script, died of smallpox and dysentery on the journey home. A handful made it back, only to spread the diseases that nearly wiped out the remaining population. In one brutal decade, the living library of Rapa Nui was burned. By the time scholars arrived, eager to learn, there was no one left to teach them. The few islanders who remembered the tablets called them Kohau Rongorongo, speaking boards, but the ability to speak their language had been extinguished. Today, only about 25 authentic objects with Rongorongo script survive, scattered in museums across the world. Linguists and codebreakers have tried for over a century to find a pattern, a Rosetta Stone that might unlock the text. Some believe the glyphs are purely ceremonial, a mnemonic device for reciting genealogies or chants. Others see a true logographic script where symbols represent whole words or ideas, perhaps recording creation myths, navigation histories, or the lineages of the Moai carvers. The truth is, we may never know. The Rongorongo script is a ghost in the archaeological record, a clear, deliberate system of communication that now communicates nothing but its own loss. It stands as one of history's most poignant what-ifs. What stories of Pacific exploration, what philosophical insights, what prayers to the ancestors are frozen in those elegant, unreadable lines? The tablets are a permanent monument to a cultural catastrophe, a secret that was not hidden but erased, leaving behind only the beautiful, silent shapes of forgotten words. While one island's history was silenced, another part of the Pacific Ocean seems to actively swallow stories whole. Southeast of Japan, in a region sailors have long called the Devil's Sea or the Dragon's Triangle, history reads like a chronicle of vanishing. Since the 1950s, this area has been infamous for the unexplained disappearance of ships and aircraft, earning it the ominous nickname, the Pacific's Bermuda Triangle. Fishing boats, research vessels, and military craft have all been reported lost under strange circumstances, often with no distress call and no wreckage ever found. The legends speak of a cursed zone where compasses spin wildly, where sudden fogs descend from clear skies, and where the sea itself becomes a hungry mouth. The secret hiding in plain sight, however, is not a supernatural vortex, but the volatile and perfectly natural geology of the seafloor beneath it. This is not a place of curses, but of catastrophic chemistry and physics. The first key lies in the sediment. The seabed here is rich in methane hydrates, ice-like solids that trap vast amounts of natural gas under pressure. When underwater landslides or shifts in temperature and pressure occur, these hydrates can destabilize in an instant. The result is a massive, sudden release of methane bubbles erupting toward the surface. To a ship, this event is a death sentence. As the bubbles rise, they drastically decrease the density of the water. A vessel that relies on buoyancy suddenly finds itself sailing not through water, but through a frothy, gaseous soup. It loses all lift and can plunge to the depths in minutes, leaving little trace. This phenomenon, documented by scientists, explains the rapid, silent sinkings that seem so mysterious. Then there is the water itself. The Devil's Sea is a notorious convergence zone for powerful ocean currents, including the mighty Kuroshio. Where such forces collide, they can generate freak waves of monstrous proportions, walls of water over 100 feet tall that appear without warning. Modern satellite data has confirmed these rogue waves are far more common than once believed. A single, devastating wave could easily cleave a ship in two, accounting for the lack of debris and the suddenness of the loss. Finally, the very Earth is restless here. The region is part of the seismically active Pacific Ring of Fire. The seafloor is dotted with active submarine volcanoes and unstable trenches. An undersea eruption or a sudden hydrothermal vent could superheat a patch of ocean, creating violent steam explosions or releasing toxic gases that would overwhelm a crew. A significant seismic shift could also trigger a local tsunami, a towering wave generated not by distant quakes but by one directly below, leaving no time for warning. When you combine these forces, the legend unravels into a clear, if terrifying, reality. A ship might be sailing in calm weather when a methane plume erupts beneath it, causing it to list violently. At that same moment, a rogue wave spawned by conflicting currents slams into its side. Meanwhile, a volcanic vent on the ocean floor spews carbon dioxide, creating a deadly, low-lying gas cloud that chokes the engines and any crew on deck. The vessel disappears not into a dimensional rift but into a perfect storm of natural disasters. The Devil's Sea, therefore, is a profound lesson in human perception. Faced with a series of tragic, inexplicable losses, we crafted a myth of a malevolent place. Science, looking at the same evidence, sees a dangerously dynamic one. The triangle on the map does not mark a supernatural secret, but a recipe written in tectonic plates and ocean chemistry, a reminder that nature, in its raw power, needs no curse to be fearsome. The hills around Visoko are not dramatic peaks, but gentle, forested slopes that for centuries were considered just another part of the Bosnian landscape. That changed in 2005 when a Bosnian-American businessman and amateur archaeologist named Semir Osmanagic looked at the largest hill, Visočica, and saw not a natural formation but a colossal, ancient pyramid. He named it the Pyramid of the Sun, and soon he identified 4 more nearby hills as pyramids, part of a vast, interconnected complex he claimed was built by a lost civilization over 12,000 years ago. This ignited a firestorm of controversy that burns to this day, a passionate battle over what we are truly seeing. Osmanagic and his team, funded by private donations and tourism, point to a series of tantalizing clues. They excavated what they call paved terraces on the hillsides, revealing large, interlocking stone blocks with seemingly flat surfaces and right angles. They discovered a network of underground tunnels which they named the Ravni tunnels, filled with curious, dry-stacked stone walls and massive ceramic blocks. Most compellingly, they announced that satellite and thermal imaging showed the Pyramid of the Sun's 4 sides were perfectly aligned with the cardinal directions, north, south, east, and west, an alignment they argue is astronomically precise and impossibly coincidental for a natural hill. For supporters, this is the world's greatest secret, the mother of all pyramids hidden in plain sight in Europe, rewriting human history with a single, staggering claim. The response from the global scientific community, however, has been a near-unanimous and forceful rejection. Geologists from across Europe who have visited the site or examined the evidence state unequivocally that the hills are natural formations, known as flatirons, common in regions with layered sedimentary rock. The stone blocks, they argue, are not cut and placed by human hands, but are a product of fracturing within the bedrock itself, a natural process that can create strikingly geometric shapes. The tunnels are not ancient passages, but likely old mine shafts or natural fissures, with the stone walls inside being simple buttresses built by medieval or later miners to prevent collapse. As for the cardinal alignment, geologists counter that the hill's orientation is a product of its geological structure and the direction of erosional forces, not intelligent design. They see a classic case of pareidolia, the human tendency to see meaningful patterns, especially faces or structures, in random shapes. The debate has become deeply polarized, a clash between inspired amateur enthusiasm and rigid academic protocol. Mainstream archaeologists accuse Osmanagic of damaging genuine medieval archaeological sites in his excavations and of promoting pseudoscience that harms Bosnia's scientific reputation. Osmanagic and his followers accuse the establishment of closed-mindedness, of refusing to investigate a paradigm-shattering discovery because it does not fit the conventional timeline. The secret of Visoko, then, is not a hidden pyramid. It is a profound question about how we interpret the world. When does a pattern become proof? When does a shape become a signature? The hills sit silently, their true story layered not in stone, but in the fierce human desire to find order, meaning, and lost grandeur in the anonymous face of nature. The sea holds no ghosts, only evidence waiting for a story. On December 4, 1872, the British brigantine de Gracia spotted another ship adrift in the calm Atlantic, midway between the Azores and Portugal. It was the Mary Celeste, a merchant brig that had left New York for Genoa a month earlier. The crew of the de Gracia hailed her, but no reply came. They boarded the eerily silent vessel to find a mystery that has never fully surrendered its truth. The ship was perfectly seaworthy, her hull sound and her cargo of industrial alcohol largely intact. Yet not a single soul was on board. The captain, Benjamin Briggs, his wife, their 2-year-old daughter, and the entire crew of 7 had vanished. The last log entry was 10 days old, noting only routine weather. A meal was set out uneaten in the galley. The crew's personal belongings and valuables were still in their quarters. The lifeboat was gone. It was as if the 10 people had simply decided, in a single moment, to step off the edge of the world. The classic ghost ship tale writes itself from here, but the real secret hides in the perfectly ordinary details the investigators recorded. First, there was the smell. The boarding party noted a strong odor of alcohol in the hold. The cargo was 1,701 barrels of denatured alcohol, a volatile spirit used in manufacturing. Upon inspection, 9 barrels were found to be empty. This was not necessarily alarming, as barrels could leak, but in the enclosed hold, leaking alcohol fumes could create a dangerous, invisible mixture with air. The second detail was the ship's navigational equipment. The Mary Celeste's chronometer, the precision clock essential for calculating longitude at sea, was found to be faulty. And the ship's sextant used for celestial navigation was missing. These are not elements of a supernatural thriller, they are the components of a human tragedy. The most plausible explanation begins with those 9 empty barrels. Imagine the scene, the ship sailing through mild weather. A crewman checks the hold and hears the slosh of leaking alcohol, smelling the potent fumes. Perhaps he sees vapors shimmering in the dim light. In 1872, the science of explosive vapors was not common knowledge among sailors. The fear would not have been a calculated risk but a primal one. The captain, informed of a potential buildup of explosive gas, faced a terrible choice. A single spark from the cook's fire or a struck match could, in his mind, blow the ship to splinters. His decision, in a moment of panic, might have been to get everyone off the vessel immediately. They hastily launched the yawl, the small lifeboat, tying it to the Mary Celeste with a long line, intending to wait at a safe distance until the fumes dissipated. This is where the second clue, the faulty chronometer, conspires with fate. If the ship's clock was wrong, the crew's calculation of their position was wrong. They may have believed they were only a few miles from the Azores, an easy road to safety, but in reality they were hundreds of miles from land. Then the weather, always the wild card. A sudden squall, unseen in the log, could have snapped the tow line. The Mary Celeste, her sails still set, would have sailed away from the tiny lifeboat, leaving the crew and the Briggs family alone in a vast ocean in an overloaded dinghy. The ship, vented by open hatches, would have aired out, the explosive danger passing as quickly as it came, leaving behind only a seaworthy, empty vessel. The missing sextant supports this, likely taken by the captain in the lifeboat to try and navigate their way to what he thought was nearby land. This explanation requires no pirates, no sea monsters, no mutiny. It requires only human error, a misunderstood natural phenomenon, and the brutal mathematics of the open ocean. The Mary Celeste was not haunted. She was abandoned in a cascade of perfectly rational fears based on incomplete information. Her secret is not one of horror but of heartbreaking misjudgment, a testament to how quickly routine can unravel when the tools we trust and the knowledge we lack conspire against us in the deep. The ocean's vast emptiness presents a human-scale mystery, but on solid ground, a different kind of blank space is filled with countless identical marks. In the prairies of western Washington state, the landscape transforms into something from a dream. Spread across hundreds of acres are the Mima Mounds, a vast field of gentle, grassy hummocks. They rise like perfect domes, each about 6 feet tall and 30 feet across, spaced with eerie regularity as far as the eye can see. From the air, the pattern is hypnotic, a natural polka dot fabric stitched onto the earth. For generations, these mounds were a geological riddle hiding in plain sight, their origin spawning theories as wild as the land itself. Local Native American legends spoke of them as the graves of a race of giants or as baskets of earth turned to stone. Settlers and early scientists proposed more earthly but equally dramatic origins. Were they Native American burial mounds on a colossal communal scale? Perhaps they were the result of intense seismic shaking, with the earth jiggling like a tray of pebbles until it settled into these neat piles. Others pointed to retreating glaciers, suggesting the mounds were formed by chunks of ice left behind in the sediment, melting slowly to leave depressions that became the spaces between the hills. Each idea had its appeal, but each also had a flaw. There was no evidence of human remains in the mounds. The seismic theory could not explain their perfect uniformity and wide distribution. The glacial hypothesis did not match the specific soil composition found within each mound. The secret remained locked in the soil, waiting for a patient observer to think not in cataclysms, but in lifetimes of tiny, persistent effort. That answer finally emerged from below, not from above. The leading scientific explanation points to a master architect no bigger than your hand, the pocket gopher. These solitary, industrious rodents are nature's relentless landscapers. A single pocket gopher can move a ton of soil each year, creating vast underground tunnel networks. Researchers noticed that the soil in the Mima Mounds is peculiarly loose and rocky, perfect for gopher excavation, while the hard, impenetrable clay pan lies just beneath the surface. Here is how the centuries-long process likely unfolds. A gopher colony begins its work in this challenging terrain. To create navigable tunnels and storage chambers, they must push the loose, rocky soil upward because they cannot dig down through the hard pan. Each little push, each small pile of dirt at a tunnel entrance, is a minuscule contribution. Over generations, perhaps thousands of years, this activity is not random. Gophers instinctively push soil away from areas that are already elevated and toward lower spots, a behavior that evens out the subterranean landscape from their perspective. This collective, instinctive effort has a staggering cumulative effect. What begins as a small pile becomes, after countless generations of gophers mindlessly following the same instinct, a symmetrical, uniform mound. The entire prairie becomes a monument to incremental labor, a testament to the power of small, consistent actions repeated over deep time. The Mima Mounds, therefore, are not a monument to a single event but to persistence. They represent the opposite of a catastrophic secret. Their mystery is one of addition, not subtraction, built not by a giant's hand or a quaking earth, but by billions of tiny pushes in the dark. They ask us to reconsider scale, to see that the most dramatic landscapes can be authored by the smallest of scribes, writing one grain of soil at a time across millennia. The gopher's patient architecture reshapes the earth from below, but high above the California desert, another artist worked on a scale visible only to the sky. Along the Colorado River near Blythe, the ground itself is etched with giants. These are the Blythe intaglios, a series of colossal figures scraped into the desert pavement, some stretching over 170 feet long. From the ground, they are nearly impossible to discern, just vague depressions in the gravelly soil. But from the air, the figures snap into breathtaking clarity, a gallery of giant humans, a coiled serpent, and a four-legged animal, likely a mountain lion or a horse. Their creation is attributed to the ancestors of the modern Mojave and Quechan peoples, carved perhaps 1,000 years ago by carefully removing the darker surface rocks to reveal the lighter soil beneath. Their purpose whispers of a sacred geography. The human figures with outstretched arms and distinct legs may represent Mastamho, the creator god of the Mojave people. The animal figures could be totemic representations of powerful spiritual helpers. These geoglyphs were likely central to ritual ceremonies, places where stories of creation and cosmology were physically enacted upon the earth, turning the entire desert into a temple floor. For centuries, they hid in plain sight, not through secrecy, but through sheer perspective. They were known to the native tribes, of course, woven into their oral traditions, but to the outside world they were invisible. It was not until 1932, when a pilot flying a mail route from Las Vegas to Blythe glanced down and saw the colossal forms, that the intaglios entered the modern consciousness. The desert had guarded its giants by making them too vast for a ground-bound observer to comprehend. This reveals a profound truth about some historical secrets. They are not hidden in locked rooms or buried in deep caves. They are sprawled across the open, waiting for us to achieve the right vantage point, to literally rise above our everyday view. The intaglios ask us what other enormous truths we might be standing on, simply because we have never learned to see the world from a different height. Chalk hills hold memories longer than stone. In the rolling green landscape of Oxfordshire, England, a giant runs across the hillside. This is the Uffington White Horse, a figure over 360 feet long, formed by trenches dug deep into the hill and filled with brilliant white chalk. Its form is all elegant, sweeping lines, a creature of abstract grace that seems to flow with the contours of the land itself. For centuries, it was thought to be a memorial to a battle from the 9th or 10th century. But modern science delivered a stunning revision. Optical luminescence dating of the lowest chalk layers revealed this horse was not medieval. It was carved in the late Bronze Age around 1000 BC, making it over 3,000 years old. It is the oldest hill figure in Britain, a secret from the dawn of metalworking that has stared at the sky ever since. The mystery is not its age, but its meaning. Why would a prehistoric community invest such immense, backbreaking labor to create an image so large it can only be fully seen from miles away across the valley? One compelling answer lies in territory and identity. The horse could have been a colossal tribal emblem, a statement of ownership and power visible to anyone approaching the region. It said, "This land is ours," in a language that needed no words, yet the stylization suggests something deeper than a simple brand. The figure's elongated, ribbon-like body and unique, beak-like head bear little resemblance to a real horse. This has led scholars to the realm of mythology. Many see the goddess Epona in its curves. Epona, the Celtic protector of horses, donkeys, and mules, was a deity of fertility, sovereignty, and the otherworld, often depicted side-saddle on a galloping mare. The Uffington figure, placed so prominently, could be a massive invocation of her power, a prayer for the fertility of the land and the strength of the tribe's animals carved directly into the earth itself. There is, however, a fascinating local twist. For generations, people living in the area did not call it a horse. They called it the White Dragon. Old legends speak of a dragon slain on the very hill where the figure lies, its shape burned into the turf. Could the abstract form actually represent a serpentine dragon, a symbol of chthonic power and the untamed forces of the earth? The truth may be that it is both, a symbol so potent it could shape-shift across millennia, holding different meanings for different peoples who all felt its sacred power. The most remarkable part of this secret, however, is not its origin but its survival. Chalk figures are ephemeral. Grass and weeds quickly reclaim the trenches, and soil washes in to bury the white lines. The Uffington horse should have vanished within a few generations. It did not because of a tradition known as scouring. For 3,000 years, every 7 years or so, the local community has gathered for a festival. They would clear the overgrowth, painstakingly dig out the trenches, and replenish them with fresh, gleaming chalk. This was not mere maintenance, it was a ritual act of remembrance, a renewal of a covenant with the land and the ancestors. Each scouring was a vote for memory over oblivion, a collective decision that this symbol was important enough to keep alive. That tradition, carried on now by English heritage, is the real secret. The Uffington white horse is not a static relic. It is a living conversation, a message from the Bronze Age that has been carefully passed, hand to hand and generation to generation, because something in its elegant, mysterious form demanded to be remembered. It asks us what we choose to scour clean in our own world, what symbols we would labor to keep visible for the next 3,000 years. The earth in Sichuan province yielded a secret that shattered a historical narrative. In 1986, workers digging clay for bricks stumbled upon 2 sacrificial pits filled with treasures that defied all understanding. This was Sangsingdui, and what emerged from the mud was a gallery of the surreal. There were bronze heads, some over 3 feet tall, with grotesquely exaggerated features, almond-shaped eyes that protruded like cylinders, and enormous, trumpet-like ears. There were masks covered in gold foil, with eyes that seemed to stare through time. A towering bronze tree over 13 feet high, with birds and dragons perched on its branches, reached for a sky it had not seen for over 3,000 years. These were not the serene, humanistic figures of the contemporaneous Shang dynasty to the north. This was an artistic language born from a completely different dream of the world. The discovery was an earthquake in archaeology. It proved the existence of a previously unknown, staggeringly sophisticated Bronze Age civilization, the Shu culture, which had thrived along the banks of the Min River around 1200 BC. They possessed metallurgical skills that rivaled any on Earth, crafting objects with a technical precision and artistic vision that seemed to belong to another planet. They worked with bronze, gold, and jade on a monumental scale, yet they left behind no writing, no grand palaces, and no royal tombs that we have found. Their entire story is told through these ritual objects, buried with deliberate, ceremonial care. The masks and heads are the central mystery. Their otherworldly appearance suggests they were not portraits of kings, but representations of gods or deified ancestors. The colossal eyes may symbolize a divine ability to see everything, while the enlarged ears could denote the capacity to hear all prayers. Perhaps these objects were worn in shamanistic rituals, where a priest would become a conduit for a deity, his human face hidden behind a mask of supernatural power. The bronze tree is equally enigmatic, likely representing a cosmic axis, a ladder connecting the earthly realm to the heavens, its birds symbolizing messengers between the worlds. Then, around 1100 BC, this brilliant civilization performed its final act. They systematically broke their most sacred treasures, burned them, and buried them in deep, rectangular pits before vanishing from history. Why? The leading theory points to a cataclysmic earthquake and flood that diverted the life-giving river, destroying their agricultural base and social order. Facing annihilation, the Shu people may have conducted a final, desperate ritual, sacrificing their most holy objects to appease the angry gods of earth and water. After the burial, the survivors likely dispersed, their culture dissolving into the landscape, their memory preserved only in faint local myths of an ancient kingdom. For 3 millennia, the secret of Sangsingdui slept under rice paddies, while Chinese historical records spoke of a great central civilization along the Yellow River. This find rewrote that map, proving that China's cradle was not singular but multiple. A dazzling, independent star had burned brightly in Sichuan, its light extinguished so completely that we forgot it had ever shone, until the day a farmer's shovel struck bronze and woke a world of giants and gods from their long slumber. The final secret is a story of desire, not discovery. Among the most iconic artifacts of the mysterious past are the crystal skulls, flawless carvings of human skulls from solid blocks of quartz, often said to be ancient Mesoamerican relics holding mystical power. The most famous, like the Mitchell-Hedges skull or the one displayed at the British Museum, are objects of breathtaking beauty. Their surfaces are polished to a glassy perfection, their features hauntingly symmetrical, and they seem to hum with an otherworldly energy. For decades, they fueled countless legends, appearing in novels and films as conduits to lost knowledge or tools of psychic power. They were presented as proof of a lost technology, a civilization so advanced it could carve one of the hardest minerals on Earth with impossible precision. The secret, however, was not in the crystal but on it. The truth emerged not from archaeology but from forensic science. When researchers finally placed these skulls under high-powered microscopes, the romantic narrative shattered. The crystal itself was ancient, but the story carved into it was a modern fiction. The examination revealed telltale marks that should not have been there. On the smooth planes of the cheeks and within the intricate teeth of the jaw, scientists found the microscopic, parallel grooves and perfectly circular pits left by high-speed rotary tools equipped with diamond or carborundum bits. This was the signature of 19th-century lapidary technology, not pre-Columbian hand drills and abrasives. Ancient Mesoamerican artisans worked quartz with sand, water, and patient, laborious hand polishing. The patterns they left are random, multidirectional scratches. The skulls bore the efficient mechanical signature of a modern workshop. Further investigation traced the trail to a likely source, the town of Idar-Oberstein in Germany, a world-renowned center for gem cutting since the medieval period. In the late 1800s, this region had both the advanced technology and the access to large quantities of Brazilian quartz to produce such objects. The skulls appeared on the market precisely during a peak of European and American fascination with the occult and a booming demand for exotic, ancient curiosities. They were not sinister hoaxes meant to rewrite history, but elegant forgeries meant to satisfy a market, beautiful trophies for wealthy collectors drawn to the romance of a vanished world. The crystal skulls, therefore, are a different kind of historical secret. They are not artifacts hiding a forgotten truth, but mirrors reflecting our own longing for mystery. We wanted them to be ancient and magical so intensely that we overlooked the evidence of the tools that made them. They remind us that sometimes the most seductive secrets are not those the past hides from us, but those we are all too willing to believe, written in the very marks we chose not to see. From crystal skulls to colossal heads, from lost libraries to misplaced continents, these 30 secrets share a single, powerful truth. The past is not a settled fact, but an ongoing conversation, a puzzle with pieces still scattered in plain sight. We have seen how a simple clay jar might have hummed with ancient electricity, how a desert floor can sketch giants only the sky can see, and how the most scrutinized monument on Earth still holds empty rooms in its heart. Each mystery, whether solved by science or still shrouded in silence, began with someone refusing to accept the surface explanation. Someone chose to look closer, to question the ordinary hill, the unreadable book, the oddly placed stone. That is the real invitation here. History's greatest secrets are not locked away in vaults. They are woven into the fabric of our everyday world, waiting for a curious mind to notice the subtle thread out of place. They remind us that wonder is not a relic of childhood, but a lens we can choose to see through at any moment. The world is still full of whispers from ages long gone. What forgotten story is etched into the landscape of your own hometown? What ordinary object on your shelf might hold a tale you have never thought to ask? The journey does not end here. Share your favorite historical mystery in the comments below, the one that makes you look at the world a little differently. And if you enjoyed this exploration into the hidden layers of our past, subscribe for more journeys to the edges of the map, where history's greatest secrets are always waiting to be found.